Hey everyone, it's Christopher Swan, and welcome to the official first episode of Living Your Journey. This is when I get to chat with different people from all over. People that have it figured out, their career paths, their passions, kind of like their North Star. Even as their story changes, that's actually what it's all about. Understanding that you are on your journey every day. After the episode, additional information about each episode plus bonus content can be found at accidentalinformation.com. The show's first guest is Alex Babajanyan. He's an artist turned art teacher and Art Academy founder. He's absolutely living proof that transforming your career and future is definitely possible. We walk through Alex's journey to founder and talk about his freelance illustration work, running his design company, even a couple chance opportunities working with the band U2, and then joining actor Sean Penn in a special project. Talk about a unique path for an artist. Alex is such a great guy, and I feel so lucky that he said yes to being the first guest. So for everyone that's listening, welcome to the show. Let's get into it. So for the listeners, we have Alex Babajanyan on, who has been a friend of mine for many years, but also a colleague, just a professional who's we've done business together. And actually, that's how we met. We actually met, I think, what was it, 7 years ago, Alex?
Something like that, yeah. Something like 7-8 years ago.
Yep. And we started our relationship really over professional, working through when I was at the Walt Disney Company, and I brought you in and hired you to do some graphic work for us. Do you remember that? Super Users?
Very well. Very well. I remember where we met the first time. That was a great experience. One of the best projects I've worked on, and met you. So that was the best thing that came out of that.
It's almost like a page to say it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, right. No. It was really the best thing. That project was fun, but the best part of it all was meeting you, and we've been friends ever since. So just so appreciative of that happening.
I think what's interesting for our listeners, this puts, I think, even me, interesting space in for them as well, that, you know, over that time frame, watching you from the moment that we met working on this, you know, graphic artwork to the different steps that you've done throughout your career and kind of your discovery and this journey that you've been on. And it's been interesting because I think there's been these different peaks and valleys for you. I know from my perspective on, you know, moving from art, you know, into commissioned art maybe, or some graphic work, into web design, and to art teaching, and to where you're at today. So maybe as we dive into that, maybe we can set the stage for the listeners as well. Maybe you could start to tell us a little bit about, you know, your background, or maybe even just where you're at today. Talk about the art school and the academy and kind of what you're running today, and then we'll take a look back at how you got there. So maybe tell us about your academy and also the art teaching that you're doing.
Absolutely. Well, I've been drawing a long time, you know, since I was 4. The art school I just opened up, it's been a few months. I wanted to open up a school for children, for adults, teenagers, all ages. But I wanted to open up a school designed after the school that I went to. I went to Art Center College of Design in Pasadena. It's a very known school all around the world. I went there and I wanted to open a school, more like an academy. So not like art classes, and not like, learn how to paint today. It was an academy. So I wanted to teach kids, adults. I want to teach them not just about art, but, you know, incorporate science into it, and math, and all of these things that, you know, art is about. So real art, not arts and crafts, but real art. And to talk about college and get them ready for that, and teach them all the foundations that they need for art. I went to a lot of art schools, you know, all around, you know, in the town I lived, I went to every single art school that there was at the time. And it was business, you know, making money. And that was the main goal. And a lot of things that I learned were on my own, you know, reading books and just kind of educating myself. So I wanted to open up a school that concentrates on real education, real teaching. So it's not just me, you know, getting them ready to have an exhibition or things like that. Oh, hey, kids, look at this painting for my parents. So, you know, nothing like that. It was just real education, give them homework, you know, do lessons, again, talk about their future, life lessons, an experience for them. Somewhere where I can communicate with them, I can experience life with them, and they can do the same with me. So that's the academy, and it's been a few months that it's open. I have about 27, 28 students, ranging from about 8 years old up to about 16 right now, and I'll have adult classes that I want to open up. And then I also my day job, I guess, it would be teaching at an elementary school. So I'm the art teacher for an elementary school in the town I live in. That's in Glendale. And I teach the entire school. I have about 950 students, somewhere around there. And I get to teach all these kids. Some of them are my students at the academy. They come over there. And again, I try to teach them the way I would at the academy. But since it's a public school, it's a little bit different. I go to each class, so I don't have my own classroom. I go to each class, and again, I give them homework. I try to teach them about all areas of art, not just fine art, which is what a lot of schools concentrate on, is the fine art. They'll teach them about the Van Goghs and the Picassos. But I try to teach them about how they can use art in modern times right now, what they can do with art. So, industrial design, environmental design. So what they can do with art that also parents don't understand. A lot of people don't understand what art truly is. They think it's all about paintings and, museums and all of these things, which is great. And that's an important part of it. But you can do so much. You can do so much with art. It is so much more than just what elementary schools, what these schools make it out to be, which is also one of the reasons why they get cut. The art programs, music programs, they get cut. They're one of the first things to go when we have budget problems.
Well, even thinking about that, then you describe art as something that's different than maybe many people think about. You talk about, that's not what art is. It sounds like you have a real passion around bringing like the knowledge or art in a different way, known in a different way to people. Is that where you find you're really connected to art and helping people not just be able to do it, but to understand it and why it matters?
Absolutely. I think I spend more time talking to people about why art is important and why it needs to be taken seriously, why it needs to be a big part of education. I spend a lot of time doing that. There's a big misunderstanding of what art really is. And a lot of it, again, goes back to fine art. There's this big emphasis on the fine arts, again, painting and the museums and all that great stuff. But again, it is important. It's a great part of art. But I want them to understand, I want parents to understand, I just want people to understand what art really is. It's everything around us, everything. It's, whenever we use an iPhone, that's art. You've got designers working, designing these products to make it, user-friendly, from the apps to the actual product itself. Everyone drives cars, but they don't realize that before that car can be made, an artist or a group of artists have to sit down and design that car, every single part of that car. Your homes that you live in, it has to be designed. So everything has an artist, involved in it. The cities we live in, they don't just, wake up one morning and say, hey, let's just make a city.
They don't?
They have to, they don't, yeah. There's no magic wand. It's like, hey guys, here's Burbank. They have to plan all these cities. They have to draw them out. They have to plan everything, and put it together. They have to see a sketch of it so they can build it from there.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I talk to my students about. I've had students who've come up to me and say, hey, why is art important? It's just painting. It's just this. And my goal is to make them understand that art is everything around you. Everything. The clothes you wear. You just, it's not, someone doesn't just make this stuff. They have to design it. That's why they have these big fashion shows and all of these, all these things. It's artists. First and foremost, it's the artists. They have to put this stuff together. They have to draw those concepts and create and invent all of these things. So it is definitely a part of our daily life. And, that's what I'm trying to make people understand, is it's not just the fine arts.
Well, before we go in the background, because I think what the listeners will want to hear about too is that you come from a place of being an artist, and you have been for many, many years. But before you describe kind of where you started with that and then how you moved into, through your journey and getting into this teaching, I'd love to know more about what is it that, and that the things that you just described about, helping educate people and participating and seeing the world maybe through the eyes of an artist is kind of what it sounds like. But what is it that is your passion for teaching children or adults too through the academy? Why that? Why that for you?
Well, I love teaching. I love being around kids. I have a 6-year-old boy myself. I have a bunch of brothers and sisters. I'm the oldest of 5, and I've always loved being around kids. I'm not much of I don't like hanging out with adults a lot. I love being around kids. They're just free spirits. They're wonderful. Their world is so much better than sitting around and talking to my adult friends, politics and all the usual stuff. They look up. You can influence them and change their world. I mean, they are the future. So whatever however you can educate them, make them better people. You're giving them that chance to become a better person in the future, to do these amazing things. And again, when I teach, my goal isn't to make them an amazing artist and to become an artist as far as their career goes. It's using art to make them better people. That's my goal. And with kids, you can do that. Their brains are like sponges. They're just absorbing and absorbing. And the other part of that is with the people I come across. Most people I come across these days are not involved in anything creative. They go to work, they come home. The kids go to school, and especially now, schools are all about testing. That's all they do. Every other week, it's a new test that these kids are doing. So there's nothing creative happening in their lives. And now with technology too, they're always distracted with their devices and all of these. There's too many distractions. So they're not using the creative part of their mind. Very little dance, very little music, very little art. And when they use that creative part of their mind, interesting things happen. They get better at school. Their math all of a sudden becomes better. Their writing becomes better. Their reading becomes better. There's something about using that part of your mind that is good for your soul. It's good for a person in all areas.
It probably benefits you because you'll create the adults you finally want to hang out with.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I'm a big kid myself.
Sure.
Yeah.
I
enjoy the things that they enjoy. I watch the cartoons they watch. And again, it's not just because I have my son. I was like that way before that too, which is why I connect with my son so well. Is because I'm a big kid myself. I think it's a better world,
Yeah, preaching to the choir to that. You know that about me.
Yes, I do. That's why we get along so well.
Absolutely. Let's take a dive back. I gave a little bit of a hint of your past world, and obviously we met with you doing some graphic work for me. But I remember first meeting you, and you were flipping through some of your books, showing me some of not just your like sketchbooks, but even just images of some of the fine art kind of work that you were doing. And I remember I was in awe. So, I knew then that you had this huge talent. And then obviously watching you grow, maybe just, briefly help us understand how you went from that to the different kind of jobs that kind of, walked your way up to today. So maybe even starting as you were doing art and from there.
Well, yeah. So, I've been, again, drawing since 4. I grew up drawing. I never stopped. There hasn't been a moment where I've stopped. Went to Art Center, College of Design, and then once I graduated, I was in illustration. So that my major was illustration. Mm-hmm. And at that time, everything was changing towards digital. It was a strange time for us, for the people that graduated. I graduated in 2007. So for us, we were still doing traditional work. We were still doing, working with paint and doing a lot of hands-on. It was very little digital work. Mm. So once I graduated, it felt so sudden. It was like everything was just digital. So I had to start learning, the illustrators and the Photoshops. I mean, I had been using Photoshop for a while before that, but not Illustrator and nothing really more than that. So I got into graphic design because traditional illustration was really dead. Mm. There's a few things you could do. You could do, illustrations for books, magazines, things like that were really popular. Think Norman Rockwell,
sure.
J.C. Leyendecker, those artists, they did traditional illustration and for magazines and things like that. But all of that died. Newspapers weren't really paying for those things. Their stock photography came out, so that it was much cheaper. So I started to do digital work.
Well, though, I'm just thinking, I'm sorry to pause you there, but, maybe this is because I think I know this about you, but I'd love to see if it's really true. And I think, even the folks listening would want to know, though, with the illustration, was that a passion that you knew initially, like you just loved doing that and you wanted to draw? Because that doesn't sound like it's gone away for you, but So is that fair to say that that was like, that's what you were going after?
Well, I mean, I had been, again, drawing is just, for me, was just drawing. I like drawing, like, whatever I can, whatever I wanted to. That's always been the way I went about art, is whatever I wanted to draw, that's what I did.
Mm-hmm.
Illustration, as far as my career path, was when I went to school, you had these majors you can pick, photography and fine art. So I was between illustration and fine art. I had to pick one.
Yep.
With fine art, your choices as career choices, very limited. You can be, you can try to be a gallery artist, which is a tough career. It's hard to pay the bills. I mean, you got to be realistic. You graduate, you want to pay. You have to be able to survive. You have to be able to live. So it would have been nice to just concentrate on that, but the reality was I had to work. So it was either fine art or illustration. Illustration was the one that, was the path that would would allow me to, make money.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I chose illustration. I've never been fond of doing commercial work. There was deadlines, and you had these limits to what you can do. So if you were working for a magazine or whatever, you were a company, you had to do whatever they wanted. So there wasn't really a lot of creative freedom.
Sure.
We've worked together, and you've seen the stuff that I've worked on. It was very limited as to what I could do. I did love, drawing. I love to draw everything.
Well, take us then from like even where we met, where you were doing some graphic work. You obviously had learned Illustrator, you knew Photoshop, you know those tools. You were doing some graphic work for me. Talk about maybe even from there then, how did you move from just doing some, like that was a side project, it sounds like, and you were just doing some freelance work, into, I know that you then started at one point your own studios, if I remember correctly. It was Alba Studios?
Yeah.
Alba Design, and then you end up doing, was it Torino with web and logo design? So maybe talk about how you went from, working just, sideline with me, and then, from freelance, and then moving into those worlds, because they're a little bit different, especially when you get into logo and web design.
It was very different. Once I graduated, I started doing some graphic work for a publishing company. Then from there, I went into film a little bit, doing some creative design, creative artwork for film. All very brief, very short amount of time. And then once I left all of that, I opened up my own company. The name changed and eventually became Simeon Inc. But I opened up my own studio. I was by myself for about half a year, then joined with a couple of my friends. They had their own company, which was Torino Creative. We were working in the same office, but I still had my own. It was basically graphic design, specifically branding, logos, and then web. The way that I eventually went that route was because, again, there was more work in those areas.
Sure.
I always enjoyed branding. I still do. I don't do it anymore as much, just because, I like to work on creative projects, and there weren't a lot of creative projects coming my way. Honestly, the creative work that I did the most was for you. That was one of the best projects we did together. That for me, it was those projects. It was very creative. It was fun. But a lot of times it was, a real estate company here, and, some marketing company here. It was,
Sure.
just that type of work.
Did it teach you something, though, as you were doing it as well? Just thinking about like where you're at today. And, I always look at these things. I wonder if this might be true for you. It taught you the things that you really didn't want to do, but it maybe taught you a little bit of like, okay, well, that was part of that path. And it kind of shaped me saying, yep, I didn't. Because I remember there's some moments for you that maybe dealing with, like you said, real estate. Maybe it wasn't as exciting, or there was tough clients. And it's a really different world than where you're at today. Not putting words in your mouth, but did that help you see kind of like, okay, yeah, this wasn't for me, or I need to do something different?
I was bored. I got to be honest. I was bored. It was boring for me. I've always loved creative work, fine art, illustration. I never liked limiting, my creativity. And all of those things were boring for me. I didn't like dealing with clients. I just didn't like dealing with the people that came across my way. And at some point, I was just tired of it. Again, when you're running your own business, you're not just concentrating on the creative work. A lot of times you're concentrating on maintaining the business. You got to do the books, you got to do accounting and marketing, all of these other things that you didn't really think about. You're like, oh, I'm going to start branding, or I'm going to start web. and you're thinking only creative work. Then reality kicks in. Okay, you got to do your accounting, you got to
Sure.
maintain your business and all of these things, and then deal with clients. So it was a one-man show. So it was just me handling all of those things. And I got bored. The projects weren't creative anymore. I was taking projects I didn't want to do just because, you got to pay the bills. So I just kind of fell out of love with it. And it's been, I think I want to say about 3 years, maybe 4 years since I closed the graphic design company. I left that world. I haven't really looked back. So I'm a lot happier now. I love teaching. I'm creatively. I've so much freedom to do the things that I really want to do and not worry about that world anymore.
And from there, I think I remember too that you were working with your father, who owns, is it a furniture company? He makes desks, very unique, specific desks for, I think, architecture. I'm probably wrong. Maybe you can correct me.
Yeah. After I closed my business, I had to find work.
Yeah.
So my dad, who was a manager and a designer for this manufacturing company, so they manufactured. It's called Mastercraft workbenches, but they manufactured these jewelers' workbenches. So jewelers would use these. Yeah, they would use these benches. They're basically like an art desk, but it was these massive. There's like 17 products. They're the biggest. They're one of the biggest companies that do that. It's a very small market, but one of the biggest companies. And he would design them, and he would manage the company. And then he took over the company. So it was the owner of that company sold it to him, and he took over. He came by and he said, "Listen, this is what's going on. Do you want to help me out?" And any chance to work with my dad wouldn't pass on that.
Sure.
So we started working together. I set some things up for him, all the accounting, all that. It was just things like that. The website, I got to do some, the website for him, the branding again, but just things that I already knew how to do. So I worked with him for a little while until, teaching came along.
Well, that's why I brought it up, actually, was I thought it was, it's interesting for people that are listening to this, because when you did that, it was kind of, not to say it was easy, but I'm wondering though if it was that like maybe the break that it gave you, like the freedom, to kind of think through like, hey, teaching might be this right new opportunity, because I remember you doing this and thinking, like, it was kind of out of your norm, but maybe that's what you needed to have a pause to kind of go, wait, what were the parts I really like, or where do I want to go next? Maybe, is that partly true, or was the teaching thing just by chance? Like, how did you figure out you wanted to go that direction?
Well, working with my dad was definitely the break I needed. It was a blessing. It was really nice to be with him. I got to spend time with them. Again, that's been important. My parents separated a long time ago, so for me, getting to spend that time with my dad was really important. And it was a nice break from all the design work, everything that I'd been doing for the past few years. I want to do something different. Here was this opportunity, so I took it, and it allowed me to I guess freshen up. If that's, for lack of a better word.
Like take a breather.
Yeah, to take a break and to just kind of energize again, to creatively get back into that right place, which I wasn't there. Because there was so many things going through my mind. There was life. There was all these things going on. So my mind wasn't in the right place. And on top of that, I had such a bad experience the past year in graphic work that it really, I was like, okay, that's it. I'm done. I don't want to have to think about this world. And teaching kind of came along where I came across one of my teachers from high school. Her first year was my last year in high school. And she's all like, well, listen, have you ever thought about teaching? Because with your skills and your knowledge, and especially with the school you went to, you might want to give it a try. And before that, people had always told me, like, you should open up your own school. You should teach. You're great with kids. I just never really thought it would be possible for me to do. I don't know why, but it just didn't cross my mind. And when I saw her, and she's like, well, listen, the high school in town, if you'd like, you can be a student teacher. Here's what you need to do. I was on my way to getting my credentials. And along the way, she sends me an email saying, hey, this elementary school is looking for an art teacher. Would you be interested? And at that time, I was considering, okay, do I want to teach high school, middle school, or elementary? But elementary hadn't really crossed my mind because I'm like, okay, I'm more of a high school. I think high school would be the right fit. And then when this happened, sent in my papers. I had nothing to lose. Sent in my resume. I went in for my interview, and they were, I was the most qualified from all the people they interviewed, and I got the job, and kind of just took it from there.
It's interesting though. It was that conversation, that teacher, this relationship you had that, I don't know, from my perspective, it almost sounds like somebody looked at you and they could help you see the connection. Obviously, you have all these skills, you have all this stuff. They knew your personality. They know what you're like. I mean, I could have even said that, I don't know if I would have nailed the teaching part, but, I'm not surprised because you would always show me things as well. So, but it really sounds like not only did the breather help to get you kind of like refresh your mind and get back into that creative space, but also having an outside perspective kind of help you kind of seize maybe opportunity that you weren't seeing, that you could be really great at.
Absolutely. And, honestly, when I got into teaching, almost immediately, I was like, this is it. This is, what I've wanted to do all along, and having her come along and, just that chance, we bumped into each other at an art store. So it was great. And once I got into it, I didn't look back at anything else. I was like, this is it. This is what I love to do, being around those kids. And also the other thing was, it was me being good at, like, I realized I am really good at teaching. Right away when I got in, discipline, respect, all of these things that mattered to me in my personal life, I got to teach, and it just came out. It's hard to describe, but it just came out. It just felt so natural to be in the classroom, to talk to them. It felt great. I was like, okay, this feels right in so many ways. And whereas before, when I was doing like graphic work, all this stuff, where I'm like, oh, is this really what I want to do? I kept questioning it. When I started teaching, I never questioned it. It just felt right.
When you started teaching, was it almost immediate, or was it that, once you started to find your groove and how to use the skills that you've learned throughout your process, your different careers, at what point when you started did you go, this is it?
Right away.
Really?
To be honest, really, yeah, right away.
Wow.
Right away.
That says a lot, doesn't it?
It does, which is, it kind of caught me off guard. I'm like, this is, and I had teachers who weren't fond of the art program at that school because of the previous art teacher. You look like you've been teaching for forever. I had teachers who had been teaching for 30 years, something like that. I know but long time, coming up to me and saying, "You are a better teacher than I am."
Wow.
And the kids, the way that they responded, all of a sudden, there's this energy in the school. For me, it wasn't just about this job. It wasn't a job. It was a passion. And when I teach with that same passion. I don't go there and think, oh, another paycheck. That's not my mentality.
Of course.
I go in there and I'm like, oh my God, I get to teach. I'm constantly trying to get better. What am I going to teach them today? What do I want them to know? We talk about life lessons. We talk about, I would talk about authors and give them reading assignments and, go to museums and all of these interesting things. Basically, I was teaching myself. That's the way I looked at it, as if that was me. What would I want to learn at that age?
Well, we talked about the teacher that obviously was a turning point really for you to have that different perspective. Was there anything else that you kind of think about that even if you were, maybe it was in a past job or something that was close to that? We talked about the time off with your father, or having that refresher. Was there anything else that, you even found or saw, like was there a resource or other people along the way that you can look back at and say, yeah, that was also really helpful to get me to where I feel so connected?
I guess in the overall journey, and since the beginning, my grandfather. He's been passed away a while ago, but he's been the biggest influence in my life. He realized that I liked to draw when I was a little kid, 4 years old. We were living in Armenia. He realized that I liked to draw. And once we came to America, he put me in art classes, took me to the art classes, and through him, my parents got involved. And he would let me set up my easels and anything I needed. He would let me set it up in his apartment, and I would paint next to him. And all that passion, everything came from him. And I never forget that every single day I have a huge picture of my grandfather in my studio, and I'm named after him, so I carry his name with pride.
Mm-hmm.
But he saw that in me, and I haven't stopped. And he was the biggest influence in my life. I can't think of anyone else to that level. But again, everyone in my life has been an influence, from my son to, my parents, my siblings.
Of course.
I've always been happy to have all of them in my life. So they've all influenced me in one way or another. But my grandfather was really the person that put me in art. And because he saw that in me.
It's interesting to hear that. I mean, it's a wonderful story, but I also find it interesting that with so many people I've chatted with, it's been resources or things that they maybe found online or a book that they read. I mean, of course, some people say, a relationship or something, but your entire path, I think, has been really about people. It's your grandfather to that teacher you spoke with, even to, I would even say, our relationship, our conversations. You obviously really helped me with, companies and things I've done before as well. So it's almost a sign of, keep paying attention to the positive influencers in your life and the people that can see things in you, and maybe look to reflections for them. And thinking about that, if that's true for you, is that something that you would also recommend to to others, ask for opinions or stay connected or have the conversation with others?
Absolutely. It's a very important part of it all. Having good people around you, having people that'll listen to you and talk to you, give you their opinion, whether it's good or bad, whatever it is, but to help you, not just to knock you down, but just to, we've had so many conversations together where there's something that didn't work and you were honest about it. And I appreciated that. That was so important to me. And also, or just in life in general, is to have good people in your life. It helps. And it helps you helps you be involved in the thing you love. And that's also, having people being involved in what you love too. Like when we worked together, you were always involved in art. We were together. We were always involved in it together.
Sure.
Two creative minds, right? It was exciting. It's just, you're not alone. You don't feel like you're alone. And to me, having all of these people in my life, it's been, it's changed. I think it brought me to where I am now.
Yeah, absolutely.
All these years we've been conversating, all the conversations we've had, all these things that we've gone through together, it brought me to the point I am today. It's the same thing with my family. So I think if I can, for the people listening, absolutely surround yourself with good people that are there to help you, to listen to you, to get you through your good days, your bad days. You're having these creative blocks where you just can't think. Having people there to talk to just kind of help you get through all that is very important. I don't think I would be able to do anything I'm doing now without that. So it's been a blessing in my life to have those people.
That's terrific. If we were thinking about if there were people that sometimes when we're in that discovery mode, we're, especially if you're in a family maybe that you are, you thinking yourself as an artist and your family isn't full of artists or there aren't those sort of people there, is there some kind of other advice you'd give somebody to say, hey, here's what you should do to try to really be true to following your passions or to figuring them out? Is it like, what if they don't have those kind of people in their life? Is there something else that you would say, do this thing, like a tangible thing to kind of figure it out or follow it?
Well, for me, my family, there's a few artists in my family, not traditional fine artists, nothing like that. My grandfather was a furniture maker, and even in old age, he was making things out of wood. So he was a craftsman. My dad's a craftsman. My mom liked to draw when she was a kid, but no one had made, was an artist for their career or anything like that. So for me, having them was important, but also being involved in the arts. I would read a lot. I wouldn't take a break from it. Even now, when you walk into my studio, I've got books everywhere. These are books I've been reading since I was a kid. So I never stopped being involved in it, every aspect of it, not just fine art. I would read about graphic design and photography and animation and film, everything that has to do with the arts, because you can be inspired from all of those areas. Music, all of those things. Going to a play or whatever it is, whatever that had to do with the arts, I try to involve myself in. So if you don't have a person like that in your life, to talk to and to, like my grandfather who put me in art classes and all of these things, you have to go out and get it. You have to involve yourself in that world that you're so hopefully passionate about. I have friends who, we went to art school together, and then when we see each other, they talk about how they want to be a famous artist. There's always this talk about fame. There's all that's all they talk about. Sell paintings and things like that. And there's also
Sure.
they want people to see them, and they want to kind of they want to live that
life.
that life, that glory. But they're not really involved in the world. They don't know what's going on in the art world. They don't have that knowledge. They don't know. They don't even know. They don't even have the knowledge about the materials they're using and what does what, which is such an important part of the arts. You have to know, the materials you're using. You have to know your craft. You have to know that. Like a musician, they have to know that guitar. They have to know the drum set. They have to know these things. That's what makes them great. So you have to involve yourself and kind of immerse yourself in that world. If you don't, you're going to have a disconnect. So I would recommend for anyone to be involved in that world. If you really love it, if you really want to do that, whether it's music, whether it's digital art or dance or whatever it is, acting, you have to just put yourself into that world and live it. Every day of your life has to be that. At least that's what it was for me. And that's still what it is for me.
Yeah. I would almost say it's even for just discovery. If you think you love it, but you're not really sure what you love about it. And I'm going to bring up an example because I flashed back when you said something about film at some point that you had a role, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't you work with Sean Penn on a documentary he was doing, and then you end up working on like a book or something? It was like I think you did some like Irish alphabet and was you too involved? Am I dreaming this?
No.
Because I bring all that up because I couldn't remember.
You remembered all that stuff.
What made me think about it too when you said all that was because you're not doing that today, and I think that's a prime example of you still love that stuff, or you were doing these unique things, but that was you doing that discovery, right? Like just what you said, you were committed to learning. It wasn't just reading the books, but you were trying things. So maybe tell that story about how you got involved with Sean and the movie and then the book and what that all was, because I'm not doing it justice.
No, I know. That was a crazy time in my life. Jeez. Like I said, I've done a lot of things in that world. But after graduating, I got into publishing. So I was in the publishing company I worked for. It was a very creative world. So I got to work with lots of different people. And I was basically a designer. That was my job.
Okay.
So I got to work with U2. That was a project that they were working on, this coffee table book, and I was doing the alphabet. So when they came in, I got to meet them and talk to them and collaborate a little bit, not too much, but I got to collaborate on this coffee table book they were working on. And so I was working on Celtic script and things like that. And then along the way, that was a very brief experience with them. It wasn't something as intense, but with Sean Penn, again, through the publishing company, I came across Sean Penn because he was a close friend of the owner of the publishing company. And started doing work together. So, design work, things like that. And then at some point, there was talk of opening up an independent film company. Again, I was really involved in that to be a creative director, and along the way, things didn't work out, which I guess in that world is just very normal,
Sure.
Which is one of the reasons why I had a falling out with film and all of that. It was a rough time. It was a very roller coaster time in my life. But I got to work with Sean, on basically on these independent films.
Yeah.
And it was scripts and, concepting and things like that.
I do remember this. This is interesting. What a departure from like the illustration and, these other things with this film. And because I remember there was even a story that I think you were at his house or something, and you were just talking about like you even in that moment were like, like what world am I in right now? It was so vastly different.
It was very strange. It was very strange because now you're around all of these people, of course, celebrities and all that stuff. And I'm the complete opposite. I'm, put me in a cave. I'm happy. I'm fine. I don't have an ego. I don't really care too much if people see me. I'm not really into that stuff. But now all of a sudden I'm in this world, celebrity, all these famous people you're coming across. It felt strange. It felt out of place. when I look back at it, it felt very out of place, and to me, it just seems like all a blur. Like, what am I doing here?
What were you
Am I
doing?
supposed to be here? How did I get
How
here?
did I become Sean
Graphic design,
Penn's best
yeah,
friend? What?
exactly, right. How did I go from graphic design to film, and now I'm at Sean Penn's house, and
Just hanging
it's
out.
strange, just hanging out. It was very strange,
Yeah.
and it was an interesting experience. I wouldn't want to do it again, to be honest with you. And whenever when people ask me these questions, like when I tell them this stuff, they ask me, "Oh, how cool, how interesting," and I always tell them like, "It wasn't that cool. It wasn't not Sean, not that, but just that world.
Yeah.
Being in
Yeah.
film and that it was ego heavy. I came across a lot of ego, and for a person who doesn't have that and is not comfortable with anything like that, it was strange. It's one of the strangest experiences I've ever had. Not something I'd want to go back into.
What a perfect way to look at all of this, too, is just another great example of you're getting into it, you're learning, you're figuring out what you love. You probably gain some skills with that, but you also know that wasn't the space for you. So look at where you're at today then. And it sounds like because this teaching is such your passion, and you're working with, young children completely different than what it might be working with different celebrities or producers or that world. So I can't help but think like you might needed to go through some of that to experience it, to see, again, maybe things you didn't really love, but things you could take out of it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't regret any of those experiences. I think they were all very important, and it shaped me to be the person I am today.
Yeah.
After all of that, one thing I forgot to mention is after all of that stuff ended, the graphic design, prior to, working at the elementary school, I was volunteering at an orphanage, Hillsides in Pasadena. I volunteered there because I had this book drive that I would do, is I would, people would donate books, and I would go across and donate it to different orphanages. And I always liked volunteering. I always wanted to help. And again, with kids, I always wanted to work with kids and help them. And so when one of the places was Hillsides, so I went to donate these books, and I loved the place. I'm like, okay, what else can I do? Because I just felt like just doing that wasn't enough. So I started to volunteer my time, and I started to work with, kids who really needed someone to look up to. They really needed that, someone to give them that world. And even though I didn't spend too much time there, it was one of the best experiences. And that was my first experience in teaching,
Yeah.
and, that was one of the best experiences I've ever had. But again, going back to film and graphic design, all those things, they were all important. Even though I didn't like them and I wasn't happy doing them, now I can look back, and I'm like, okay, that wasn't really my place.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have gotten to teaching without going through those experiences. That's very important.
I'm glad that you also mentioned and brought up the book drive and the volunteering. I forgot about that as well, and that's a clear example. Obviously, it wasn't like you just like got a job of teaching and it was an aha moment. Of course, you had one, but you had these you almost tested the waters with that. You did that, and I'm sure you wanted a little bit more and kept going from there. Well, this is it's a great story. I know I've been watching it from, now from afar, but it's been really fascinating to see you go through this. And I know that as you started teaching, I could see instantly it was just everything seemed different for you. And then now knowing that you started your academy as well, it's actually kind of nice that you have both. You might think, because you can kind of have a different element of teaching as well. So it's, I think from the outside perspective, it sounds great, Alex. Like you're doing a lot of fun work, and it sounds like you really love what you're doing.
I do. I'm very lucky to be able to do this. I want to give something back. I want to do something and leave something when I'm long gone. To influence these kids and the people around me in my community, and in any way that I can. And I love art. That's what I'm good at. And if I can influence them and make them better people, then I can't ask for anything more. And that's one thing when I talk to parents about the academy, and I tell them, listen, there's a good chance your child might not become an artist. That's not my goal, is to turn them into an artist. My goal is to make them into really good people, kind people, because I think that's that's lacking in our world, is kind people, good people, people who care, and I want them to be that. I want to put that, inspire them to be that type of a person. They can be doctors, they can be lawyers, whatever they want to be in their life. That doesn't matter. Most importantly is I want them to be good people, and I can teach them that through art, because art has discipline. Art has respect. There's love in there. You just have to teach it the right way. And that is my ultimate goal. It's the same way I teach my son. When I teach these kids, I look at them as if they're my kids. Okay, I am teaching my kids how, to be better people. So I'm lucky to be able to do that with teaching. And again, appreciation for teachers, right? I'm around all of these amazing people who they spend, their most of their day trying to influence our future generation. So I just have so much respect, and I'm just so lucky to be able to do it myself.
Well, sounds like those kids are lucky as well, having somebody that cares so much. And thank you for sharing your story with us. I think it's fascinating to listen to the journey you have here. And again, thanks for sharing. I'm sure our listeners are going to love it. Where would you point people? I know that we'll put it on our website as well, but even just to see a little bit of your artwork and also to learn more about the Academy, where should they go?
Well, I have my own website. It's simianinc.com, and I'll just spell that. So it's SIMIANINK.com. That's my website. I have my art book there, a little bit about the Academy. And so you can see and, get an idea of my work and what I do. That's pretty much my everyday. The things that you see on that site are just, the things I do on a daily basis. I just put them up there. I have an Instagram, which is Simian Inc., same spelling. So you can go there and I update that once in a while to show, what I'm doing on a daily basis at the studio or at school. And that's probably the best way. I have my contact info there if anyone wants to get in touch with me. And I'll be more than happy to answer questions if anyone ever wants to talk to me, have any, questions about career choices or just anything in general. Love to conversate, so they can get in touch with me through my website.
Great. And we'll put that on the website as well so people can get to it pretty easily. And I definitely recommend if you want to see some really beautiful illustration and also just learn more about the Academy, check it out. I've obviously been a fan of your illustration for a while, and I have some of those pieces that you've done for me personally. And also, I'm just going to give a plug to your illustrations in President Lincoln, and you did Bronson.
Yeah.
That's right. So those, I got to say, just for that alone, you should go look at what he's drawn on there. They're kind of amazing.
Well, the Lincoln one is actually the original of that is hanging at the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library and Museum in Springfield, Illinois. So if anyone lives in that area, they can go to the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library and Museum and see that work. I haven't been able to see it myself. I haven't been able to go there yet, but it's there. And if anyone's over there and happens to go, take a picture, send it over so I can see it myself. But I have a piece hanging over there, which was a real honor for them to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, again, thanks for taking the time and telling your story. And I know talk soon. And for everybody else, you can find his information on our website on accidentalinformation.com.
Thank you, Christopher. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Being here with you.
Thank you. There you have it, my conversation with Alex Babajanyan. Did you catch that he doesn't think of his art academy as teaching art, but to teach people about the world? I love that. Such fun and such memories for me having that conversation with Alex, but also some really good advice and new ways to look at our own careers and maybe even our purpose. I hope you found the story interesting. Let Alex and I know what you think of the episode. Tweet us at accidentalinfo using hashtag #livingyourjourney. You can find out more about Alex, links to his art and academy, as well as bonus content at accidentalinformation.com. If you like what you heard, please subscribe. And even better, give us a review in iTunes. They really do help us bring new episodes and guests each week. Living Your Journey is available every Tuesday. So until next week,